Hi. Oh, wow. Beautiful. Yes, just because it was very great to actually show all of my 4 films. And in the beginning, the first film was actually made in 1994 in New York City. The second film, IKU, was made in Tokyo in 2000, released in 2000. By the time I made the third feature, Fui Zero, was in Berlin, released in 2017. And since 2009, I thought that I could make, I conceived the idea of making the IKU sequel. And so 2009, 2002, 3, it only takes me 14 years to get here. And so it's quite a long journey, but I consider myself quite lucky to be able to make 4 feature films. And I guess maybe in the beginning, I wasn't even sure what each film would be connected or what's the meaning of each film. And I also realized that in a way of making it, when IKU first came out, it was included in the book, New Queer Cinema, by B. Ruby Rich. And I always think like, but I'm not just doing new queer cinema, I also always have this sci-fi elements in my film, so I decided to call myself kind of a sci-fi new queer cinema. And even for each film, I always try to define a genre, like what would be my genre. I couldn't, I actually do not like the word experimental. So every film I try to say, like Fresh Kill, I say, okay, it's an eco-cybernoia. IKU was a cyberpunk, sci-fi cyberpunk. Fui Zero was sci-fi cyberpunk. And by the time of Yuki, I couldn't figure out what it is about. So actually it's called like a sci-fi viral old reality cinema. So kindly we decide because the 3 other films have been shown, but I added a little trailer. It's about 11 minutes of the 3 films. So you kind of can see what I mean, kind of like trying to create in this particular genre called sci-fi new queer cinema. And I think we'll just show that and we go right into Yuki, and then we will talk to you after. With Yuki, it could be a bit detour wherever it's going. So if you get too confused, don't struggle with it, just let it go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shu Lea. And again, your music in your film are just incredible, and it's great to be able to listen to it.
Yes.
That's really something.
I have a great music producer I'm working with for the past 3 films, Aria Negro, who was more like an opera singer, but she's doing a lot of DJ and based in Berlin. Yeah.
And we see also Ira Negro in Fruit Zero. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, she's performing.
She also performing. Yeah.
Explain a little what you were meaning by crafting a sci-fi new queer cinema. If you're okay, I would like to come back a little on it, maybe to add some contextualization about the new queer cinema part, maybe. Because, as you say, new queer cinema is an expression coined by cinema critic B. Ruby Rich in the 90s. And new queer cinema designates a movement born in the 80s and early 90s, mostly in the US and UK. It's not that true, but it starts in the US and UK.
Yeah.
When both and it's important when both countries were experiencing a serious conservative setback under Reagan and Thatcher. We were also in the heights of the AIDS epidemic, in the AIDS crisis. And this was a time where homosexuality and queer sexualities were mostly represented in the mainstream news and media as a threat and as depraved and dangerous. Fluids like a sperm, a piece, or all that we have seen in Fluid Zero, were thinking as dangerous and depraved. So a new wave of filmmakers started to push against this image, and they tried to show, for example, the reality of AIDS, and to show HIV positive patients as people that kept living their everyday lives and their sexuality. And as filmmaker Jan Bove said last year when we was in this HD edition, he said something like, we were represented as zombies ready to die, but we had a life, we continue to live. So there was this need to show patient and HIV positive patients with life and even with a sexuality. New queer cinema is also known for mixing together various styles, formats, and practices, mixing together experimental elements with narrative elements. And of course, the idea of pleasure is also central to new queer cinema, and it rejects heteronormative representations and assimilation politics, complicated for me in English. And it makes new propositions, creates new images of and for the queer community, of queer sexuality and pleasure, leaving more room also for ambiguity and fluidity. I'm saying all of this because it makes sense when you look at your films. There's a lot of that going on, and that's why I'm saying all this. Yes, and of course, Shu Lea, you're part of this new queer cinema. You're often linked to it, and by people like none others than B. Ruby Rich, as you said. So the person who coined this term new queer cinema. And B. Ruby Rich wrote about your work, about IKU, as you said, in an article entitled, because the title is amazing, the IKU experience, the Shu Lea Cheang phenomenon. You're a phenomenon since the beginning in the 2000s. So we used a quotation from this article to introduce our program at CINEMATEK, and I will just read it to you because we really like it. Having leapfrogged over narrative, updated porn, and utterly transcended the seemingly binary universe of the new queer cinema, Cheang has become a genre, if not a gender unto herself. like this cult person. I also really like this quote because it points out one of the issues that people have with this new queer cinema. That is, when you think in new queer cinema, you mostly think first of white male filmmakers, like Gus Van Sant, Todd Haynes, or even Derek Jarman. And of course, there are names like Greg Araki or Isaac Julian or even Cheryl Donier that has been associated to this new queer cinema. But mostly it's male filmmakers, white filmmakers, that have been mainly associated with this movement, which is, of course, not true to what was and what is the new queer cinema. And just for an anecdote, I'm thinking, for instance, of this huge scene of black lesbian filmmakers that were doing experimental shorts in the 90s, like Shari Freiloth, Yvonne Welborn, Michelle Parkerson, Dot Suggs, Dee Rees, Jocelyn Taylor, and so on and so on. And we tend to not think of them when we think new queer cinema, but they were there, and there was a quite number of them, you know. And you work with Shari Freiloth, on Fresh Kill, and yes. So here you are, Shu Lea, you are one of the filmmakers that shows us that this new queer cinema is not white, that it is not just gay or even a binary universe. And maybe you want to react to this in any way, maybe contradict me or Oh, it's okay.
There's
Use-
nothing to contradict you. Yeah, I think because I was saying like in the 80s in New York, I do live in New York City. So these are the filmmakers I know. I work with them. Shao Danya, for example, and of course with the gay filmmakers, Tak Hans, and all these are like kind of we all in the same neighborhood in New York. Of course, at the time, New York City has even more radical cinema happening. Like in the East Village, you have this No Way cinema. It's even more extreme. You have the so-called New American cinema, which is also more experimental, totally on the meta level. And at the same time, I also, working with Spike Lee or An Lee, this is more traditional narrative films. So it's this kind of very different genre, like all combined together. But I think I somehow got twisted into a science fiction, So that's why I sort of figure that I don't really belong to any of these genre anymore. So I sort of have to kind of create my own genre. Yeah.
Yes, that's what you were saying. And I want to go to this part, like crafting a science fiction, because I think it's really interesting the way you said it,
Yeah, but I think when I first in the beginning, I wasn't particularly thinking I'm actually creating these sci-fi nuclear cinema, but gradually maybe even after Fui Zero, I realized that I'm totally in that direction, so maybe even not before Fui Zero, I was particularly thinking, but I really am part of the nuclear cinema. At the same time, I do have this sci-fi element in my work. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and you're doing this sci-fi nuclear cinema.
Yeah.
And
it's a genre of my own, yes. In my own genre, it's pretty good. I pretty much have my own gender too, so it's okay.
Yes, that was what I was saying.
Yeah.
I would like to focus a bit on your relationship with the work of science fiction Samuel Delany. I told you I wanted a question.
Yes.
Because for those who don't know, Samuel Delany is this well-known figure in the North American science fiction community, and he also happens to be black, queer, and disabled, which is worth mentioning because it informs a lot of his writing. So Delany wrote science fiction like Babel 17, Dahlgren, Triton, to name a few of his stories. But he also wrote a lot of essays on science fiction, on literature, but also on sexuality, on queer politics, a lot of queer politics and sexuality. And there are really a ton of connections that can be made between your practice, I think, as an artist and filmmaker, and Samuel Delany's works and theoretical thinking, starting with porn, I think, and how do you name the...
Okay, Samuel Delany actually was, of course, have a whole series of science fiction novels. At the same time, as a gay black man, I think he is probably someone who's so nakedly able to tell his own story about if you read some of his sort of more like a biography novel way, and it's really touching. And also he is, of course, someone coming from the Times Square, and in the 80s, I was also working in the Times Squares. That this is really when the Pong cinema still exists in Times Square, and happened to be the film industry in New York City actually also a lot of editing space. The post-production studio is all at the Times Square, 1600 Broadway, that's where I work. And so I was really related to Times Square in terms of the Pong cinema. You can go there, I think as a gay man, you go there and you jerk off each other, and me just quietly sit down and all that. But I got a chance to get introduced to Samuel Delany He was gonna work with me on the IKU script, and we actually got started. But then I went to Tokyo. He started working at that time. This is quite a beautiful story. At that time, he refused to use computer. This was like 1998, and he doesn't want to use computer. And by that time, and then no telecommunication possible. So, and I was already on my way to Tokyo to work on IKU. I got the producer in Tokyo say, "Come to Tokyo, we can work on the script." At the same time, I was supposed to work with Delaney, and then Delaney got like somehow at the end, I actually have to send someone to go to his house, and he would just read his story idea, and the person would write it down and send it to me. But at the end, it didn't work out. I think he started writing some scenes, but it was quite outrageous. Everybody was naked running around in the city, that kind of thing. I was like, oh dear. Anyway, so we didn't get to do the film together. By the time I got to Tokyo, IKU kind of take on a very different terms in terms of script writing. At the end, I wrote the script myself. But I think by the time I make Fui Zero, I actually pay an homage to Samuel Delaney. Particularly, I think totally thinking about like the golden shower, the pleasure of taking in golden shower. I think, or think about the Fui, the enjoyable Fui, and of course, Fui Zero is totally sort of coming out from this like repression from the virus, the AIDS virus, HIV. So this liberation of the fluid, So, but in a certain way, I would really want to, think a lot of my work, inspiration. I'm indebted to Samuel Delaney's work. Yeah.
But you don't have contact with him anymore?
Not recently, no. Maybe a few years ago, I tried to get him to see Fui Zero, but Fui Zero was never really able to show in America. It was too radical. So, yeah, I haven't had a chance to. I really would love him to see Fui Zero for sure, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to do the parallel with his plan.
Yeah. Maybe I should probably try to make that happen, yeah.
There also a thing that Samuel Delaney says about science fiction, that is, you must understand that science fiction is a community-driven practices, and you cannot understand science fiction if you don't do the history of the audience, the readerships, and the audience of science fiction, or all the productions that the audience have made, like fanzine, letterzine, and so on. It's like this really a collective practice, and there is the same in all your movies or your films. They're always collective and participatory, with performers. There are artworks in your films. There is in Fresh Kills. Sorry, you have the Paper Tiger crew that do the set, the art sets, and you have like installation, like the news wall. That is an installation from Paper Tiger, and here you have a lot of our artwork and performance going on in Yuki.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us a little more about that.
In Yuki, yes, many characters is based, even in the sort of Trashville, in this alter universe, many characters are based on the real person. I don't know if you know the media art history, like Sandy Storm, Stellac, and also Adriana Knopf, who is recently really artist, really rising, media artist, and Electra, who does who basically is a radio activist who pretty much set up the whole Wi-Fi for Berlin, Freifund, who set up all the Wi-Fi. And then, different characters actually based on, even for the avatars, I created I think it's about 20 avatars in the film, like the main characters, and each one is kind of based on real characters,
real persons, and that's incredible as an family portrait, like some.
Yeah.
All of your films also have some kind of archive of a state of scene, like IKU. It's a Japan, like post-porn scene. Berlin with you got Berlin with Fruit Zero, and then here all these avatars that you got, all this. That's just incredible. For Fresh Kills, we say this film is all about breaking in, and I want the audience to be able to break in the movie too, and that explains the structure of the film. Like you always, it's not just the space of the film, the cinematic space, but it's also what it's outside the space of the film, you know, like how the audience or the spectators can maybe reclaim your films and do whatever they want to do. Yeah, you know. Maybe I wasn't that.
Yeah, that's a deeper level of discussion.
Okay, so maybe that's the moment we open this discussion, and maybe some of you have questions about the films. Merci.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you because I feel super powerful after these 3 movies, really in touch with the orgasmic power that is not always productive, reproductive, but just something that we can direct in also self-empowering direction. So really thank you. And I'm super curious to understand how this genomic infrastructure was first in IQ and then it arrives here. And as you are also a biohacker, and how this practice of rewriting bodies and how it was conceived when it was in the first movie and arrived here. And because it's always something that we think that we are written, but in the biohacking practice there is also the power to be in charge of writing our own bodies. So I'm very curious to know how your biohacking practice merged in the movie making practice, maybe. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Actually, I think even from Fresh Kill, almost every film there is a very powerful sort of system operating. I consider the kind of operating system, you know, how the social control function. And a lot of my work is actually really kind of confronting these social control mechanism, the apparatus, what runs the surveillance, what runs the system control. And I think in terms of the control of the body, in my film is probably getting more and more stronger. For example, Fresh Kill, you kind of see that people get affected by the toxic fish. So their body kind of, you know, the whole speech pattern got changed and the girl disappeared, that kind of thing. But it's still patriarchy, the big company, corporation who is dumping the waste from the developed country to developing country. But then by IKU, I think I create this company called Genom Corporation, who is more of an internet porno empire. But this is also very 1990s film, because in the 1990s, I always say, you know, I was doing net art. I'm part of this net art community. I was commissioned by the Guggenheim for the first wet art work called Brandon. You know, so I consider myself part of this net art community in the 1990s. But if you think about back in the 1990s, who's making money from the net? The porno. It's like, you know, I think at the time all the artists is trying to say like net art cannot be sold. And we are not making any money from the net art. We are working on it. And at the same time, the porno industry has developed how to make money. It's just like one click, you know, they show you a bit and then you say, okay, I want to see more. Then you have to click. And you know, this is the way we lost the internet today. It's like every step you go, you just have to click and bring out your credit card, isn't it? Anyway, so by the time with IKU, I think Genom Corporation is actually, I consider them like the porno empire. on the internet. So they actually send out these replicants to collect orgasm data. Yeah, from then on, I think I was very obsessed with data, and particularly orgasm data, So the whole collection, and of course my work kind of sort of in development with the whole big data, then the whole development, working, I work both as an artist and a filmmaker. So as an artist, I have this whole strand of work that kind of working with data, with also different technology and all that. So by the time Fui Zero, of course, coming from, I always talking about like how I feel like the HIV virus actually mutated within inside me. I carry the HIV virus with me, and the word again. But if we look at Fui Zero, it's actually at the time during the AIDS crisis, the one that really compared me was the way that how the government working hand in hand with pharmaceutical industry that could actually control the release of the drugs, not having the drug release, particularly in America. So with that control of not releasing the drugs, that more people die than others. And I think you see many other movies about how American people had to go to Mexico to buy the cure drug, for example, or different country. So I think the whole control of the body just getting more and more in my film. By the time Yuki, I think it's right in the beginning, I consider our body is obsolete, and because basically, if this new genome corporation can kind of surface themselves as a bioengineering company and biotech company, and control the human body and take over the human body, the idea of bionet is actually built inside your body. So you become part of the knot of the bionet. And of course, since I start developing this work from 2009, when I was having a residency at Hanga Media Lab in Barcelona. And so I think this is also about the time of the kind of hacking culture, in particular in biotechnology, bioart. So there's a whole strand of work, and I would call a whole new generation of bioartists that actually either using their body to experiment or actually, hacking into the biotechnology, try to grasp the technology, how is that technology being used. So I do feel I also part of this community, like bio art. However, I kind of created this more science fiction aspect of it. Yeah, it's a long answer. So.
Hi. Thank you for the film, first of all. I also saw IKU yesterday, and so now this. And to me, both the films have a very peculiar and a little bit similar pacing. And I was wondering what your process was, or your inspiration to get this sort of pacing that feels almost very, how do you say it, like very tuck, 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 like a little bit non-dynamic pacing. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how you come there, and how your editing process goes.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never thought about this one. As I say, IKU was released in 2000, so I was making it during 1998, 1999, the time that I've just finished Brandon. And IKU was done in Tokyo. And by the time 2009, when I want to, I thought about that I can make Yuki as a sequel. I immediately have the title, just reverse IKU to Yuki as a sequel. And the story, the kind of scenario was written in 2009 during this Hanga Media Lab residency. And I always know that Yuki would be the name of the virus. And of course, at that time, I didn't particularly think I would ever get funding to make Yuki. And so I become making it as a performance, and also I developed a game about it actually. In terms of the pacing of the film, I actually do not particularly feel they are so similar, because I always think IKU is really free flow, because the IKU was that was really conceived as a sci-fi porno, and so IKU doesn't really particularly have the plot so concrete. So it's sort of like what I call the porno film is like a delivery of pizza. You know, whenever like the porno movie is always like, oh, someone come to deliver pizza. You know, they ring the bell and then you go into the house and you have sex, right? This is like episodic this way. So IKU was actually, you know, constructed that way. So there's always different scenes with sex, and you collect the data, and then you go on to the next scene. But Yuki, I think Yuki was more like, right from the beginning, I know that I have three storyline I had to deal with, you know. So we had the Bionet from the Canon Corporation, we have the city, and the e-Trashville. By the time I was able to write the script for Yuki was actually 2020. So it was during the lockdown in Paris, I wrote the script. So I must say the script at the end was really affected by the whole experience, you know, during COVID. Pacing wise, I would say Yuki is a bit tighter, no? Yeah, yeah,
But it still has this sort of very deliberate, like, if that makes sense.
yeah.
I don't know. I thought maybe there was a music that was related to it or something.
Yeah, actually, I never edit with the music. I always edit and then have the music come in. Yeah, so it was never edited with the already have music. Yeah, not one of these films. Never done it that way. So somehow, but you know, for me, I consider when you do the edit, you actually could have your tempo, and the music can come in. So I never really do a kind of montage with the music already in place. Yeah. But I do want to say something about the music for IKU and Yuki is that when we make Yuki, by the end of the movie, when we editing them, we start making music with Area Negro. Actually, we kind of got into the crisis because for me, Yuki's music had to be grand. You know, it had to be like IKU with the pretty much like the play with orchestra, you know, recording. I want to go into the music studio, do recording with instruments, that kind of music. However, at that time we already run out of budget, so it was not possible, and we got really into crisis. So finally, I came up with the idea, say that we would remix the music from IKU. So basically, I talked to the producer from IKU in Tokyo, and he agreed to give me all the music soundtrack. And then I just, you know, we just kind of turned it around and became the music for Yuki. So it's good. It's recycled, you know. Same with the e-trash. So.
And speaking of the e-trash, can you tell us a little more about it and the research you did in Nigeria?
Yes.
Oh.
I think from Fresh Cure, I was more into, Fresh Cure deal with the industrial waste dump in the developing country, and how the toxic industrial waste actually went back to America via sort of via sushi, or via like via polluted sushi, which actually proved true when we have the Fukushima, the nuclear leak, and I actually got really focused a lot on the electronic trash. I think the way that we create, how much electronic trash we have created. So that was always my big topic. And in 2015, I did have a chance to go to Nigeria. Actually, it's organized by the Dutch artist Daniel Proger. And so we went to Nigeria and then did some research on this electronic waste right at the Lagos, and that was really impressive. The smell of the e-trash, the kind of massive, and but by the time I get back from Africa, I was so sure that I could not make a film in Africa with that on as my set. And when I was doing my residency at Hangai, actually also have some e-trash delivered by the electronic trash company in Barcelona, like 4 tons of e-trash from one-day collection in Barcelona city. So I think by the time I got back from Nigeria, I was, turning the e-trash into 3D landscape, and that's why like the whole e-trash bill was, built with all the electronic parts, but all in 3D. Once you build this landscape, then I realized all my character also have to become avatars. So yeah. So there is that story of development. Yes.
Yeah, I was happy to see among the names some names of references that I had no time to memorize, of people that was set from Ghana and this scene from the avatars. So that made me glad, because I mean all the names of the hacker scene are always from here, and we know there's a large other form of
Right.
development there. And I wanted to reference, as you're talking science fiction, also coming from Asia, science fiction author, I don't know if it's coming up, and based in US, that is Chen Qiufan, and that is taking place not only in Africa, but the scene is happening in China, actually. Well, Silesium Island is the French title. I'm not sure what's the original English title. And yeah, because we only have one side of the... We have sort of an insight of what is happening in Africa, yeah, but it's also happening in other parts of South, I suppose. So yeah, I was just thinking on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And thank you.
Okay.
What is your relation with game creation and gaming, basically?
Yeah, actually, the Yuki game, I call it Enter the Bayonet, and for me, the movie, of course, at the end is about how Yuki, the virus, would actually enter or infiltrate the bayonet. You know, in the film, at the end, you kind of see the blood cell got released onto the streets, or kind of liberated the blood cells. But when I make the game that was developed in 2009, but particularly around 2011, I have a residency at Laboro, also in Spain, and basically I did a collective game using biosensors, and so it's all about like how you actually can fight together. If you can fight together with the bayonet, but then you have to kind of using the biosensor and sort of wanting to keep everybody to balance out your heartbeat. The biosensor can sense your heartbeat, your blood pressure, but all these elements have to be sort of in sync. So that you can fight back the bayonet. I think when I started writing the scenario, the script, I started writing the script in 2017, and at that time I called the cinema interrupted cinema, because I wrote this scene about how in the last 10 minutes of the film you actually the thing is about like you actually enter the cinema and you can download the app, and then the last 10 minutes of the cinema, you as a virus or you are the blood cell, you actually have a fight. And then, with this fight, you can decide like who won, is the bayonet won, the Ganon Corporation won, or the virus won. Anyway, I actually done the whole programmation about how to do this. But at the end, I gave up the idea. But at the end, the only thing that kind of related to game is the whole e-trash bill is done with a Unity game engine. So wow. So actually, it's almost I sort of navigate the whole landscape, the characters. That's all done with the Unity. Yeah, it's a game engine. Yeah, let's say.
So you also worked with machinima type of creations before, or is it the?
I never worked with Machinisma. I think at that time I have a producer, Isabel Avers, and she worked a lot with Machinisma. Yeah. Yeah, I think at the end the animation is done here with the Cinema 4D, and then transfer, upload to the Unity so that we can navigate the characters in Unity. We did a very, it's a very low budget film, so the whole motion capture was done in a very cheap way. It's between me and the designer Lohan. I think we play all the roles. We like jumping, roller skating. We just got a studio. We got a residency at Bosch, and in this studio, we every day we do motion capture between me and him. So, yeah. So in a way, it's why it's definitely not your high tech 3D animation, but I think it has its own fun.
I've seen 3 of the 4 films: Fresh Kill, and then UK and Iku.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious how the transition, or how between Fresh Kill and then the first pornographic film, what happened, or how porn kind of like entered your practice. I'm very curious to how that. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna say.
I got degraded.
No, I think it's a very fascinating thing and a big step to go from like more erotic, queer erotic film, which I found in First Kill was more the case, to like very explicit porn. I'm just curious how that went.
Yeah. First Kill was actually just a little sex, yeah, but it's First Kill is really quite political, and also in terms of the story, the plot is more complicated. Also, also the characters, and also at that time I was really, from New York City, we were really, this whole thing about racial gender is actually quite serious, particularly racial. So Fresh Kill, I think the biggest experiment for me in Fresh Kill was experimenting with all these racial mess up. So you have like a Native American father, and then the daughter is an Asian Indian, or, this kind of really mess up, and, without any explanation in a way. During the Fresh Kill, of course, was my first feature film, and it also kind of it concluded my living in New York City through the 90s. So Fresh Kill also mixed up with a lot of different stories all the time. At the time, also, Fresh Kill was made right before the cyberspace arrived. I consider my own in touch with the cyberspace would be about 1992, 1993, particularly, got to know the VNX matrix from Australia. So I feel like Fresh Kill, that's why I call it like an eco-cybernoia, like, kind of knowing like how the whole, with the internet, how the world will be changed, but not sure, so it has that. But, okay, so during making the Fresh Kill, I got really bored. During the editing, it took like almost like 2 years, or a long time to edit. So it was really difficult, and so I got bored, and so I started making sex video. So I actually have those sex video made in New York City called Sex Fish and Sex Ball. It's very clear. They really short film and make with all pretty much the lesbian community in New York, and we just get together, say you want to have sex in front of the camera. And we did it, and somehow I got to Tokyo about 1994 for a residency. And this Japanese producer really liked this video. And also at the time in Tokyo, I got, I had this community, or the queer community in Tokyo. So I start also making a little porno video with them. So it became like a 4 small sex video that was released in Japan, and in USA was distributed by Video Data Bank. So this is kind of my calling card for making IKU, I guess. Yes. But IKU is actually a takeoff on Blade Runner. If you saw even the beginning scene, even in the trailer you saw today, it was like frame by frame, a takeoff from the Blade Runner scene to the elevator. I guess by the time I got to Tokyo, I realized that all these science fiction movie fantasy is very Orient, sort of taking off on all this kind of Oriental city, eating ramen in the rain, that kind of thing. So it's actually kind of, IKU actually is also a debunking of these kind of Western concept of the Asia and of the, sort of science fiction. Why would all the science fiction just fill with a lot of screen, TV screen, flying flying thing and all that. But I think at the end I was also curious about like why they never have sex in science fiction films. I mean, if you look like Blade Runner, there was supposed to be sex scene that really Scott made, but was cut. At the same time, by the time you saw 2046, the Blade Runner sequel, it was like, oh God, we never see sex, but they have a kid, right? So. So I'm always curious about, so I really think, I want to make sex for science fiction films. So, yeah.
And also because science fiction is a lot heteronormative. Like, yeah, they are kids, but you don't see them having sex.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Make love, make babies.
Yes. I think 2046 really, I was like, wow, a baby. It becomes such a, the trouble baby, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, at some point in YKU and UK,
Yuki.
Yuki, the visuals become very abstract sometimes. Also, especially by YKU, the strip scene where it gets a lot of motion blur. Is it something you plan beforehand, or comes later, or is like on the go?
Yeah. I think IKU was, as I say, was really free flow. And so, sometimes for these scenes, and actually also the IKU saw this time is actually the director's cut. It's 90 minutes, which was premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. But then after the film, we got a lot of people walk out of the film at Sundance as a midnight film, like they're just not used to sex. It happens, yeah? And so after that, my producer actually edited it into a 72 minutes IKU, which is the make into DVD and got distributed quite a lot. So recently, because I was making Yuki, so I remastered the 90 minutes so I can take some clip on it. And then we decided to release this 90 minutes. And so the 90 minutes was really just so loose, like sometimes it's like just really for the pleasure of sex, like if the woman having fun, dancing together, playing together, it's really hard to call cut. As simple as that, right? It could be as simple as that. That's what you mean by it go abstract,
Yeah, and also just the visuals, as sometimes the motion blur or something takes really over and repetitive, and it makes you like, it really draws you in like some sort of
right
visual.
Yeah, I think it's true, like I think if I actually work in the porno industry when I was in New York, that was like the time I was, also making how I make money in New York. I work as a film editor and also work as a boom person. holding the microphone, boom person in the independent film production. But at that time in New York, there's a lot of Hollywood people came in to the weekend and to make Pong film, and at that time, the Pong film is actually still shot in 35 millimeter, and they would come in on Friday and then rent the camera for a day. You rent the camera for Friday, but because you cannot return the camera, and so you return on Monday, but that means you can shoot for 3 days, so it's economic. And so it's always this kind of 72 hours filming. So I learned a lot from, working on the porno film set, I would say, yeah. But when I start directing those scene, the sex scene, I think the question is really about when to call cut. Especially all the performers are really someone, we have so much respect for each other. We explain a lot about how to approach. So once you get going, for me, it's really difficult to call cut, yeah. So that's why I guess you kind of sometimes, but again, I explain because the version you saw is the director's cut. So I had that freedom to just let it go, yeah.
And then one short question: what makes you get the ick from being called experimental filmmaker or director?
What I don't like?
That being called an experimental filmmaker. Okay.
Yeah, I think experimental just meaning so. It has so many different meanings. Of course, I understand all my film is in a way experimental, but if we want to seriously talking about like experimental cinema, there's actually a particular genre called experimental cinema, and that belong to the kind of filmmaker who really take out the camera and really. The story is not important anymore. It's on the film, the medium itself, So for me, that is really the experimental cinema is really on the medium, the film as medium, the digital as a medium. However, I think a lot of my work, I am more dealing with many different subject matter, different issues, so I really don't want to put myself into that category as an experimental filmmaker. I would probably say that as why I get a bit of allergy to be called experimental filmmaker.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Someone else?
That was a good question.
Hi. I was wondering about greenlighting and distributing films like these, maybe less so the final one, which you already made two. They were more pornographic. But I was wondering, especially with the first one with IKU, how did that go? Because I imagine you'd get a lot of pushback, even for an independent film, and America being a little more anti-public porn stuff. So I was just wondering, how do you go from pitching that and making that into a feature film?
Oh, IKU actually was totally almost like for me like a commission. So the producer Asai-san in Tokyo, he has his own distributing company called Uplink, and he's actually also the producer for Derry Jarman's Blue. So yeah, at the same time, he's someone that he really want to challenge the Japanese. Japanese have a very strict thing about that you cannot reveal any sexual organs, right? In the film,
the black balls.
Yes,
usually,
exactly. Yeah. Or the mosaic. Like if you look at a lot of AV film in Japan with mosaic. So he, when he asked me. As I say, I make these 4 short video as my calling card. So he said, Shu Lea, would you be interested in making a long feature film with me, which would challenge the kind of porn scene? So when I got to Tokyo, we actually went to all the AV industry to see if we can find actors or performance from them or get their funding, but that didn't work out. The producer at the end find all the money himself, supported the film. The film actually, I think it got pretty good distribution, mainly through the DVD sales. Yeah. and then somehow it was shot in digital, but then it wasn't even digital at the time. I think it's, the sort of high A, beta SP, but it would come from the one of these cartridge video. And we, at the end, he actually transfer it back to 35 millimeter and show in the cinema in Japan. But I think he told me he got like 60 black spots on these, 35 millimeter film because he had to deal with the sensor board in Japan all the time. They're like, okay, we have to, put more black on this frame or that frame, and he actually did it. Yeah, I never see that version of the film. I couldn't bear it, so I never saw it. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
During the end credits of Fluid Zero, there was a mentioning that the film was originally conceived to be shown on Lars von Trier's label Pussy Power. That was... Okay, I see you already know what it's about. So how did you come involved with that? Did they contact you, and how did it end up not being made there?
Yeah. I was. I show IKU in Copenhagen. I think that was 2000, and after that, someone took me to Lars von Trier's studio, and they actually started this Pussy Power. And so I think by that time they make 4 films and all that. So they say, would you like to work with us? So I was like, yeah, fine. So I wrote immediately. I actually came out with the concept for Fluid. At that time, it doesn't have Fluid Zero, just Fluid. I came out the concept quite quickly, sent them the scenario. They really love it. They got this woman producer to work with me. Then we worked on it for 1 year, but then the Pussy Power went bankrupt. So they give me to another producer, another Danish producer, and I worked with him again for 2 years, it was at the end didn't work out because he doesn't like the name of Hans character. So the character, why her name Hans? It should be changed the name or something. It's stupid. So again, 2 years I couldn't make the film, and by that time I was using Fluid Zero, the Fluid concept to make art installation, and I made performance, and I got censored like 3 times. One in Berlin, one in Norway, one in Montreal. I got, I would be doing performance, and 30 minutes before the performance start, I get shut down. But anyway, so the performance is all about kind of also creating these kind of dungeon, like the urinal set, but it's kind of more about the experiment with how to work with the people being set in that kind of environment, and we do a lot of improvisation kind of performance. So as a performance, it got shut down 3 times, and I also sometimes I do also installation with the urinals, and so basically I couldn't make the film of Fluid, and I start making art with it, and that go on for quite a few years until 2014. I really got nervous. I was like, really feel like I really have to make this movie. And so I find the producer Jürgen Blunin in Berlin, and he always makes very cheap film. So I was like, oh God, am I going so low to make a film such a low budget? But at that time I feel like only he can help me make this film. So he did, and 2014 we raised money. By 2017, Fluid Zero was released, premiere at Berlinale, and end up being included also in Documenta. And my producer Jürgen Blunin continued working with me and produced the work 3x3x6 in Venice, and also produced these Yuki. Yeah. So it's we will continue working, and sometimes I also make more radical porno with him. So short.
If I may, I'm very interested. All this talk of pussy power. Speaking of pussy power, why? Because you're also very politically engaged. so obviously because the porn industry, the mainstream porn industry can be so heteronormative, patriarchal, sometimes, yeah, with a lot of malpractice, why and how is pornography for you such an important medium for, yeah, your political engagement and your feminism and your queer feminism?
For sure, for sure. I think when IKU first came out, there would be a question about like how could you claim yourself being feminist and making porn? You know, this was the time. But since then, I think we now have a genre called post-porn, meaning like, you know, you could, a lot of post-porn is made by yourself, for yourself, you know. So you actually can hold up the camera and doing porn. I think it's finally why is porn so powerful? It's the recognition of the pleasure, or the pleasure of sex. And I think, you know, for me to be able to come to that stage to say that yes, you know, there is a pleasure to be, and the pleasure is powerful. I have never used this orgasmic power. Why? You know? Someone just, yeah, you just say like orgasmic power. I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, I, you know, but okay, but I have my own sort of, my own, what you call it, the label is I do have orgasm data, you know, nobody else is doing orgasm data. I'm doing orgasm data. And that's because I travel a lot, you know, I really have to have storage. And so, and so yeah, so my poem is a lot more about data, isn't it? You know, like collecting orgasm data, how to recycle orgasm data. I mean, Yuki is totally about how orgasm data become a property, become the assets that can be exploited by the corporation, and how you can, you know, how do you infiltrate, you know, via the Yuki, the virus, to bring back, you know, to get back that data, you know. So in terms of the, for me, porn is very powerful. And as I also refer to Samuel Delany, you know, if you read his book, his you know, sort of autobiography, but in the disguise of the narrative, it's just very powerful and also very vulnerable. You know, I think when we expose ourselves, our vulnerability or sexuality, whichever kind of preference of sexuality you prefer, you become in a very vulnerable position too. And I think a lot of people can sort of take advantage of that, you know. So at the end is also this idea of self-expression, that you could be self-expressed, the pleasure you actually can, you know, hold, you know, basically holding the camera in your own hand to shoot the porno you want, to express your sexual desire and pleasure. I think this is a very powerful matter.